Hello and welcome. Digitalisation in the pharmaceutical industry is what we're talking about today. My name's Andrew Whiteock. I'm joined by my colleague, Philippe Thiel. We're here to talk about Industry 4.0. The idea of Industry 4.0 is about 10 years old. It's an opportunity now for us to look back and have a status review of these 10 years of digitalisation in the industry, to give some feedback, to talk about some of the beliefs and the challenges that have been faced by our industry, and also to give some tips for those who are starting their digitalisation journey. So, Philippe, what do you see are the most common mistakes you have encountered in your digitalisation projects in the pharmaceutical industry?
Thank you, Andy. Digitalization is frequently defined as collecting data and exploiting it somehow. Nevertheless, this should not make it only an IT topic. It has an impact on a wide variety of business areas and concerns the different business levels in the organization. In that regard, limiting digitalization to the pure IT area will definitely limit the benefits, which are, as you know, increasing the process efficiency and optimizing business operations, keyword productivity, eliminating data silos between all departments and improving data transparency, and third, making the areas of improvement visible with the final goal to facilitate the decision-making process.
Have you met companies that want to review and completely revolutionize their organization?
Well, it's not possible. It's not about completely redefining its business model from scratch and switching to a full digital company or digital plant. I would rather speak about evolution instead of revolution. Basically, digitalization does not change the rules for business. It's always about value creation. Therefore, tact is required by implementing digitalization in a successful organization. And there are many possibilities between sticking to the traditional way of doing business and switching to a full digital business model. And every company has to find its own way, which should be aligned, of course, with its digital vision, take into account all assets of the organization. We are talking here about system landscape, and turn its digital vision into a concrete, tailor-made digital roadmap.
Right, it's a journey that a company must embark on. But how does it happen? How does this digital transition actually happen? Is it about migrating the whole organization overnight?
Digitalization, no, does not mean that your entire company must go digital immediately. It's not about implementing the last technologies overnight. It is important to consider a digital strategy globally, but the implementation of your strategy does not have to happen at the same time. We talk here about a digital journey, which requires different steps, of course, which should be implemented also in the right sequence, and which certainly also requires successive investments. This implementation depends also a lot of the starting point, namely where your company is currently positioned. For instance, if all your process relevant data are already stored in a data lake, then your business is probably already well digitized. It remains nevertheless crucial to go the 20 remaining % to increase efficiency and finally the customer value. Once one decides to initiate its digital journey, he should apply common sense and break down the digital transformation strategy into small steps and walk the path at his own speed.
Okay, so you've talked about a starting point, where your company is currently positioned. I mean, do you consider, or does a company consider their competitors when they're defining their digital path?
This is the next mistake we frequently see in the industry. Do not try to benchmark your competition and to copy-paste their digital strategy. In the case of digitalization, the approach of simply following the market leader as usual does not work. There are two reasons for that. First, and I refer here to the notion of starting point I just mentioned before, each company has its own digital maturity and its own system landscape. And it is obvious that the solution implemented at your competition might not be the one working for your organization.
Yeah, okay. So what's your experience regarding change management, for example?
Important topic, and this is my second point. Actually, it is usual that the more successful companies resist change just because their business is working well and they do not see the need to reinvent themselves and introduce maybe a certain digital risk in their well-running organization. Change processes are often initiated by small agile companies where the stakeholders show a kind of digital awareness. They see in digitalization more opportunities than risk. All companies that are not market leaders today need to take a closer look at new improvement potentials arising from digital technologies. Digitalization is not only a challenge, but also a great opportunity for them.
When we talk about digitalization, the first aspect that often comes to mind is technology. So, Philippe, does digitalization mean acquiring and implementing the latest technology?
No, indeed. Digitalization does not mean that you absolutely need to implement the latest technologies. The decisive factor is rather which technology is used at which point. For sure, you need the latest sensors if you are working in the area of IoT, because all components then have to communicate smoothly together. But at the end of any product development, there is a user interface. And if it's too complicated, no one will use it. And at this point, then it's better to implement technologies that more user are familiar with, for instance, smartphone and apps, and user friendliness is key.
So let's focus a bit now on the pharmaceutical industry. Does it make sense for a pharmaceutical company to go digital? What are the specific challenges that this industry faces on the digital journey?
Digitalization already started some years ago, you told us, and is now an underlying trend. Some companies are still in the starting blocks, others are already more advanced. But one thing is certain, no matter where you are, digitalization should be on your agenda. It is no longer an option. And as it is often the case with technological evolution, the early adopters are the big winners. Most of the customers I meet in the pharmaceutical industry do have a very clear digital vision, but some have still not put their digital strategy in place, or for those who did it, are implementing it in a small doses, which are not always aligned even with the strategy. And compared to other sectors, the pharmaceutical industry seems to show high innovation, of course, willingness to get digital, but has specific challenges as well, which can be explained certainly by the highly regulated context of this industry and maybe sometimes the lack of clarity in the current regulations, such as the use of cloud solutions.
Yeah, regulation. How do you see the organizational context within pharmaceutical companies?
This is a second challenge, Andy, which is common actually to a lot of industry sectors. It is related to the silos we find in the organization, which, when it comes to data, generate systematically inconsistency and sometimes a lack of transparency. And this is particularly harmful in a regulated environment like a pharmaceutical industry. This silos mentality, for instance, between R&D, production, and which is even sometimes reflected in the overall data architecture of the company, is definitely a hot topic which should be addressed and considered all along the transformation process, which is nothing else as a change management process.
Yeah, change management. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry, of course, has just faced one of its biggest challenges with the pandemic, this huge pandemic at an incredible speed, impacting all of us and the global economy. But what about digitalization in this context? How do you think that digitalization could be a solution for facing some of the post-pandemic challenges?
Indeed, Andy. During the COVID-19 crisis, the pharmaceutical industry experienced at the same time an accelerating growing demand, supply chain difficulties, which sometimes led to medicine shortages. And even today, the crisis is still limiting access to some basic ingredients that usually come from India or China. And this stress test for the whole pharmaceutical industry will certainly have consequences in a post-COVID situation, in a post-COVID landscape, where the companies will have to rethink their manufacturing organization to become more resilient, which I believe can only be achieved with strong digital basis and reinforced interconnectivity.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations from your experience in the pharma industry or the processing industry in general for someone who wants to embark on their digital transition?
Indeed, and one thing should be kept in mind. Into digital transformation, the key word is transformation. A digital transformation never fails for technological reasons. It is a change management process that one would have to apply to his organization with all that this implies in terms of hurdles. And we can refer here to nice theoretical model like the Kubler-Ross change model. This transformation is definitely not a matter for the CIO. And all functions are involved in a permanent exchange between R&D, operations, productions, quality, and businesses. This transformation must be driven from top management to employees, and communication is a key to success in order to overcome either individual fears or resistance within the organization. Second recommendation would be forget the one-size-fits-all approach. Customization is key. Your own digital roadmap, which is the basis of your digital strategy at plant or organization level, must take into account your existing IT and automation OT systems. It should clearly answer the questions how to introduce new technologies into an existing environment. The third recommendation would be step by step, but always on the move. Implementing a digital strategy involves many different digital projects that are all technically interconnected, and the sequence of their implementation is of course very important. Keeping this roadmap within a 3 to 5 years timeline gives an acceptable horizon to fit the CapEx plan.
Okay, so at a glance, consider change management, forget one size fits all, and do it step by step. So, as a conclusion, we often talk about recipes in pharmaceutical. What's the magic recipe for those who want to successfully negotiate their digital shift?
I would like to have one, Andy, but unfortunately, there is no unique magic recipe for successful implementation of digitalization within one pharma organization. As it takes place on different levels, digital solutions have to be clearly tailored and customized to your own respective requirements and needs and aligned with your digital vision. This is where we come in with our digital consulting services. We help our customers to concretize their big picture, to turn their vision into a customized, tailor-made, and directly implementable digital action plan, ensuring them that the return on their investment will be maximized.
Okay, thanks very much, Philippe. That was an interesting discussion. I hope that you guys have found this useful and now know what you need to do to embrace that digital transformation in the pharmaceutical industry. Thanks very much. Goodbye.